Some information about educational finance and what we're expecting next year. That is something that is easy to understand and hopefully gives you that background. Throughout this presentation here, this is something I'm going through. I presented to our District Accountability Committee last Thursday, May 14th. But this is information for staff. This is information for our community. And I think it's really important that if there are questions that you reach out. So I hope this provides you some information, but please feel free to reach out if you have questions. Just the things I'm going to review. So how K-12 is funded. In Colorado, they use a formula that takes the number of students times a dollar amount, which is called per pupil funding, to equal what's called the total program. So in the state of Colorado's eyes, the amount of funding that we need to educate our students here in West Grand. Currently, the state of Colorado does take the number of students on an averaging. However, that averaging number is decreasing. At one point, we had a 5-year average that we got that we were awarded, and then it was a 4-year average. Next year, it will be a 3-year average, and so on and so forth. But let's jump into it. The big buckets in how we are funded. First and foremost is our local community, and we appreciate that. It is through property tax, specific ownership tax, other taxes such as mill levies and bonds, as well as our forest reserve funds. And the state then backfills what the local tax does not reach to get to that total program number. However, in the state of Colorado, from 2009 to 2024, there was something called the budget stabilization factor. And that is, there was legislation at the time put in to where the state withheld some of that money in order to stabilize the state budget. Over those years, from 2009 to 2024, there was over $5 million West Grand did not receive from the state of Colorado. And so just thankfully, that has been bought down and that's at zero now. But that is just important background information, I think, for educational funding. We also receive federal funds like our Title I funds, as well as our IDEA funds. And those pieces are really important. There are additional grants. It can be either local, state, or federal. And again, when we think about grants and all this, it's the money we have. We don't really have that, quote, savings account. So big revenues. I already talked some of this stuff, but again, property tax is the biggest revenue source. We're very grateful for our West Grand community that has passed 2 mill levy overrides. Mill levy overrides can continue. And so these 2 overrides, one from 1997 and one from 2021, are things that go and carry on. And so that additional $1.1 million was approved by our taxpayers, and it can be used for various reasons that are outlined in those ballot questions. But it mainly goes to people, and that's salary and benefits and those things. And so we're very grateful for that. Now, a bond is a little bit different. A bond cannot be used necessarily to pay for people, but bond is for buildings or capital infrastructure. In 2006, we had a bond to pay for a brand new K-8 building, and that was a bond of $13 million, and that will sunset, and the last payment will happen in December. And it is our intention to ask for a continuation of a bond for no tax increase. And then again, the state and federal funds that are really important for us to continue to have that level of funding, as well as grants. There are a lot of different grants, again, that could be local, could be state, could be private, and those grants supplement our programs. Sometimes they can be used for people, but most of the time they are used for student programming. We do have a potential, what is called the BEST grant, which is Building Excellent Schools Today. And that is from the state of Colorado. And we applied for that. And again, that is for buildings and that is for renovation. And so we're hopeful for that and hope to get to talk to you more about that coming up here in a few weeks. Again, I was just speaking about grants, and here is a list of some really big grants we've had in the past. I know during COVID, there are many grants that not just schools, but that different entities received. And those ones were helpful for us to be able to provide HVAC work in both of our buildings, Chromebooks and technology, summer schools, stipend and bonuses for staff. A teacher retention grant, that was really the original funding catalyst for our early childhood center. Our school nurse grant, again, really providing a lot of those supplies. HTI and rural coaction, you've heard, that's where we dug in and started our internship program. And even though the grant is gone, we still continue to offer those opportunities. And on the right side, you'll see a list of some current grants we have. And so grants is just a part of how we're able to continue to provide different things for our students and staff here. And at the bottom, it just made the note, with grants come mandates. We don't always get to decide how to use the money. Some grants are very strict and stringent with this has to be used exactly for this thing. And so grants are wonderful and we appreciate them. And with them comes a lot of red strings. So grants are an important part of our revenue. So let's talk expenses. We just talked revenue, so let's talk expenses. The biggest expense we have is for people. 82% of our entire district budget is spent on salary and benefits. And as you can see, our benefits are about an additional 22% for each staff salary. And that includes life insurance, that includes para, which is retirement, as well as health insurance. And then the other expenditure categories, I guess, are supplies and equipment for classrooms. The district supplies and equipment, such as curriculum and professional development. Our directors and operational supplies and equipment. And then we do transfer to other funds. So we have a capital reserve fund. Capital reserve fund focuses on those different facility projects or technology projects and helps us continue to keep up our maintenance, purchase the new things as the different things get older. And so our capital reserve fund is an important piece, as well as our food service fund and transportation fund. And then our student activity fund, the district transfers some money to each building for student activities. And yes, that does include athletics, but that also includes science fair, that includes drama, that includes fundraising for a class field trip. And that fund is really managed by each building principal and the athletic and activity director. So that's kind of how we spend money here at West Grand. I like this picture because it just, for me, I'm a visual person and it kind of puts it into perspective for me. So total budget for West Grand for next year projected right now, $7.7 million. Then you can see over here, salary and benefits for staff is almost $6.3 million. And so again, you can see 82, the biggest chunk of our budget is all for our people. And then you see this 441,000, and that is what I already spoke about, into the transfers and all the other supplies and costs that I listed earlier. We do have what is called a reserve fund. And so what that is, it's kind of like a savings account, but it's not as accessible. And whatever money we don't spend at the end of the year rolls into what's called our reserve fund. And there's a certain amount that the state requires that we have in our reserve fund. And there's also a policy by the Board of Education that also encourages and requires a certain amount to be held in those reserves. We have a very healthy reserve, and that just goes to show the very just good fiscal management of the district in the past, and we appreciate that. And those funds are used for one-time funding. and or for like those rainy days and we still have to pay our people and pay our bills. And so this is really just our money picture in general. So, big picture for next year. I already listed out the general fund, what our salary and benefits are, and how that kind of plays into what we plan as we go into this budgeting season. State of Colorado has a new funding formula, which we will slowly be losing the student averaging. Again, for this next year, we have a 3-year student count average. For next year, it'll be a 2-year student count average. The following year, there will be no average. And so we know over the past couple of years, we have been slowly declining in student enrollment, and therefore our averaging has also been declining. Our federal funding for next year, we will be losing about $10,000. Sorry for that. We need to add a zero there, but we will be losing about $10,000 due to cuts at the federal level in title funds. We will have an increase in expenses, such as a 17% increase in health insurance and just the cost of business. As we all know, everything costs more. What we don't know for sure, right, is our student count, as we do know it's decreasing, but we don't know exactly where that will land. And as they tell us, we have a lot of numbers and they're the best estimates we have, but until it is passed into bill, it's not final. But this is really the assumptions that we work from and know as we build our budget for the next school year. Some highlights for salary and benefits. Board of Education at our last board meeting did approve a step increase for all certified staff, as well as a percentage increase for all classified staff. We're also hoping to propose an increase in pay for coaches and sponsors. Some of the things we're talking about is our different transfers to the different funds. Again, since we know our student count is decreasing, it's important for us to really look at how we spend money to see where those things can be adjusted. Because we have such a healthy fund balance, we are able to transfer less into each fund, excuse me, in order to continue to make sure we have that fiscally responsible, balanced budget as well. And again, we're looking at all of those funds to see how we can do that. We're also looking at classroom and supplies and equipment. Again, the percentage of our budget is not really with classroom supplies and equipment, but we're just looking at not necessarily making cuts to make a budget cut, but we're looking at how do we spend it and do we need to spend it there, or are there other places that makes sense? So again, I kind of went through that fast. It's a lot of information. I would be happy to sit down and talk with anybody, answer questions. I think those things are always a great thing. I also want to invite you as a community member or a staff member or a DAC member, 2 opportunities. One, we have a board meeting Tuesday, May 26th at 6 p.m. where I will be talking about the preliminary budget and presenting that to the Board of Education. I'd also like to invite you to a staff community open house hours for budget questions at the boardroom on Friday, May 28th from 2 to 4 p.m. Again, we are here to be transparent in how we plan, how we spend, and how we continue to find ways to try to provide the best learning environment for our staff and students here in our community. I hope this video was educational, informational, and I appreciate you taking the time.